I can explain to you why I quit self help with one quote from Alan Watts. The reason you want to be better is the reason why you aren't. Self help can be a distraction, self help can be addicting, just like anything else. And when you buy into the idea of self help, when you are practicing self help, you're inherently buying into the belief that there's something about you that needs to be fixed, that there's something about you that needs to be helped, that there's something about you that's broken. And of course, we all need help. Of course, there's parts of all of us that can be better. And I think self help can help you get part of the way there. Self help is not inherently bad. I think for many people at many stages in life, it can be good. I think it can also become an addiction and a coping mechanism for some people where they get stuck on the endless treadmill of self help like a dog chasing their tail, and they just never quite seem to get out of it. And I've definitely been guilty of that at times in my life. Although at times of my life, self help was literally what saved my life, which is why I have this channel, which is why I believe in sharing this knowledge with people, which is why I really do believe that it makes a difference because I know it did for me. But I also know that once you get to a certain point and you've learned the majority of what self help can teach you, then the work becomes very nuanced. And if you don't start doing it on your own, you're not gonna get anywhere. You're just gonna be endlessly listening to self-help and not making any actual progress. And I think that's when people get into the danger of spiritual bypassing, where they buy into these ideas that are, in some circumstances, good ideas. The idea of gratitude can be very helpful in certain situations, but if you're being grateful for everything and not questioning some things just because you're satisfied with being grateful, I think that can be a problem. I think toxic positivity can also be a problem. I think that there are situations in which you need to be a well-rounded person. You need to be able to explore your shadow, as Carl Jung would say, where you need to be able to sit in the discomfort. I think being present and living in the moment is good. I think that Eckhart Tolle teaches the power of now, and I'm a big fan of his. But I think sometimes being in the moment can be counterproductive. I think sometimes you need to leave the moment and consider what else is happening and do some analysis. So, in this video, I just want to talk about the dark side of self help and how people can get lost in it. And I also want to say the one thing that I think can help you post self help that can give you a lot of progress on your own. And for me, it's something that never fails. It's just always going to point to issues in yourself that are harder to see. And it's sitting with discomfort. Whenever you have discomfort, questioning it. We'll get there. I want to talk about a few other things first. But if you like this video so far, please subscribe so you can keep seeing this kind of content. I make conscious content, at least I try to. Sometimes it's humorous. But I try to make conscious content because I think that I think we're living in a very sick society. And I think the healthiest thing to do is step out of it in one way or another and question these things and find yourself in all of the mess. And that's what I try to do on this channel. So if you're interested, please subscribe. And also, I would love to know in the comments if self-help has failed you, how, and what have you replaced it with? Is there anything that's helped you move past self-help? Are there things you found that contradict the major self-help beliefs that once you understood those, you were able to move forward? I think it can be a really good idea to share some of your knowledge and help some other people as well. And I'm very interested in what people have to say. So let's talk about when self-help can be helpful. I think that when you're uneducated on the concepts, when you're uneducated on how to set boundaries, if you're potentially people pleasing and you don't even know what that is, that could be a time in which you reach out for some self-help. I think that when you're going through a difficult period in your life, when you're going through a traumatic situation, when you're going through a life change, a transition, a breakup, I think that extra reinforcement that you can get from self-help can be extremely illuminating, can be extremely comforting too at a time when you do need that comfort, right? Sometimes self-help can be a comfort that people don't get away from, but other times it can be a comfort that you really need. At times when you don't have anyone positive in your life, at times when you are surrounded by toxic people in toxic situations, that that can be absolutely a time to turn to self-help. And that's how self-help helped me, was when I was younger and not having many positive influences and not having a lot of encouragement. I found the popular people on YouTube back in the day and on television on PBS. I was watching Wayne Dyer. I was watching Tony Robbins. I was watching all the mainstream sort of self-help gurus. And I look back now and I think, wow, some of this is so cheesy. Some of this is so corny. I can't believe I was inspired by this. But at the time when I had no other inspiration in my life, it was life-saving. I really believe that it was life-saving, and that's why I have this channel, because I think that the things that I learned from other people, the things that I had learned from pursuing self-help are what made me able to cope and live the life that I have today. So I really do believe in self-help by saying I quit it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying to be aware and be conscious, because at a certain point it can, as I said, become a distraction like anything else. And I think once you've learned boundaries, once you've learned emotional regulation, once you've learned about toxic people, because toxic people in your life can be a big problem. And that's a really hard one, because you can do all the self help in the world. But if the people around you are still abusive, if they're still toxic, you're not going to be able to change them. And you're going to still be taking in some of that energy. No matter how bulletproof you become, if you're surrounded by difficult people, if you're surrounded by negative people, good luck. I don't think you can be immune to that. Maybe if someone's a psychopath, maybe they don't get bothered by being surrounded by toxic people, but I think most people do. So learning these things can be the first step. And I think the antidote to self-help, the true antidote to self-help, to stop needing it, is self-acceptance, is radical self-acceptance. And some people can take that concept of radical self-acceptance, and if they are a toxic person, they will use it as an excuse to harm others, to accept the worst parts of themselves and subject others to those parts. But that's not what it means at all. Radical self acceptance is something that you could practice when you're going through something in life that's particularly difficult, if you have an addiction, per se. And what happens is that you feel a lot of shame and guilt for this thing, right? Let's just say, and we'll use addiction as an example, because I think everyone has an addiction. Some people just have culturally acceptable addictions like drinking and shopping and yeah, television. There's a lot of acceptable there's a lot of socially acceptable addictions. So if you have an addiction, I think the only thing to do is accept it. Because if you keep feeling guilt about it, if you keep feeling shame about it, if you keep hurting yourself for simply having this addiction, then you're just going to keep sitting, you're just going to keep making yourself uncomfortable, and you're going to keep reaching for the very thing that you want to get away from, because you just have so much discomfort from not accepting it. So it's not saying don't work on it. Self acceptance does not at all mean don't work on things. It doesn't at all mean that everyone has to put up with you exactly as you are. That's not what it is at all. Radical self acceptance is just a step that helps you become better, that helps you get to the next step. Because if you are struggling with an addiction and you can't accept it, then you're not going to be able to work through it. That addiction is going to just move from one thing to the other. Addiction can have sort of a transference quality where you're addicted to one thing and then you get addicted to another thing. I think they even teach that in some addiction recovery groups, where if you're addicted to one drug, start smoking cigarettes, because it's a least harm. It's a drug that's not as harmful, right? They teach harm reduction. And if that's the best thing someone can do, then that's the best thing someone can do. But I think really trying to practice this self-acceptance will go a long, long way. And you can go through life realizing the things that you weren't accepting about yourself before, and you can just kind of talk yourself through them and say, hey, I did this thing and it's not great and I'm not proud of it, but I'm human and I made a mistake and I'm going to accept it and I'm going to give myself grace and I'm going to move forward. And I think many people are very accepting of others and not as accepting of themselves. I know that I'm like this very often, where if someone does something to me, I will easily forgive them. I'll just let it go if they seem like they were well meaning. Yet when I do that thing to myself, I am very upset. I'm very self critical. And I think that's something to watch out for if you're the type of person who is sensitive, if you're the type of person who does a lot of self help, who is very interested in self help, then chances are you're probably pretty hard on yourself. And one thing you can ask yourself is, how would I react if someone else did this to me? And chances are you'll brush it off your shoulders. You'll forgive them. I mean, it depends what it is, of course. But I think very often the type of people who are interested in self help are the type of people who don't forgive themselves easily. Yet we forgive others. So one of the other things that I want to talk about is these maladaptive coping mechanisms, which are things that we reach for when we're feeling discomfort. It's like we don't want to feel the discomfort, so we have to reach for something to distract us from it. And that can be scrolling on social media, it can be overworking, it can be overeating, it can be shopping, it can be any number of things. It can be spending time with friends and people that you don't really like just to distract yourself. It can be always being out of the house, always having to go and do something, always having to constantly be busy. And it's just a coping mechanism. It's not actually who you are. I think that I think there's this quote from Krishnamurti, and it says, "It's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a sick society." And I think our society is very, very sick these days. And a lot of what we reach for, a lot of the unhealthy things, a lot of the unhealthy coping mechanisms, the maladaptive coping mechanisms, are ways in which we cope with a society that's unhealthy. And I think that's one thing to realize, is that sometimes you're in a situation that's unhealthy that you can't do anything about other than accept it. If you live in a country with a toxic government, if you work at a toxic workplace, if you have toxic people in your family, to some degree you can make change and move away from these situations, and to another degree you can't. So accepting it allows you to stop trying to cope with it. And self-help can be one of the most deceptive maladaptive coping mechanisms of all of them, because you think that you're doing something good. You think that you're bettering yourself. Everyone says that this is a good thing to do, but at a certain point, it's not. You're just on the hamster wheel and in some way constantly telling yourself that you're not good enough and that you need to be better and that there's something wrong with you. And anything that you practice, you get better at. So if you constantly practice telling yourself that there's something wrong with you, you're just gonna keep getting better at thinking that there's something wrong with you. And there's something wrong with all of us. There's something wrong with society. There's something wrong with life itself. So might as well accept it. If you're not hurting others and you're living a decent life, you're paying your bills, you're going to work every day, then you can't fix everything. It's just not going to happen. And if you're doing self-help at the expense of actually living your life, then that's a big problem. That's a big problem. That's the biggest problem you have. So I think that it also gets dangerous when people buy into a specific self-help belief, whether it's gratitude or being in the moment or toxic positivity. Because let's face it, it's not healthy to be positive in every situation. It's not helpful to be present in every situation. There's times where you need to step back and think and analyze and not be in the present moment, because you need to think about something that happened in the past to help you have a better future. And gratitude is great when it's appropriate, but there are some situations in which having gratitude is a sign of mental illness, perhaps. It's good to be grateful for life itself. It's good to be grateful for the blessings that you've been given. It's good to be grateful for many things, but it's not I don't think it's good to be grateful for everything. And I think some people take these concepts and they think it's like a panacea, like it's the cure all to everything. If I'm just in the moment, then I won't have to think about the past, then I won't have to have any pain because I'm here now. I don't think that works, and I think that's why many of the people who practice these things, you can look at them and see that they don't seem very well adjusted. They seem like they're clinging to that one type of belief for dear life because on some level they know that it has a crack in it and that it's not the end all be all of solving their problems. So I think that once you learn most of the concepts that self help teaches, once you understand boundaries and gratitude and all of these things, I think that the next step, the more nuanced step, the step that only you can do, is to recognize your discomfort and to sit with it. I think self help will teach you many things, but it's not going to teach you what you personally have issues with and then how to deal with those things because it's not something you can hear from someone else and then inherently understand and be fixed. Like you have to actually work through this thing. It's a process that needs to be in motion. It's something that needs to happen while you're living your life, while you're going about your day and feeling the discomforts. If you're not practicing it in life, if you're not practicing it on an everyday basis, then you really haven't integrated the lessons. And I think that, at least for me, the one question that I try to ask myself now, the one thing that I try to do is pay attention to my discomfort, whether it's when I'm in traffic, whether it's with another person. I think one of the most telling things is when someone says something to us, someone literally just says words to us, and we feel a great deal of discomfort. Because on some level, it's just words. It's not this tangible thing. It's not like somebody hit us. It's not like somebody hurt us physically. It's just words. Yet there's something in our head from our past. There's something that's taking those words and allowing them to hurt us. And sometimes they're not even hurtful words. Sometimes there are, right? If someone's trying to hurt you and they know you well enough, like that's difficult. I've had that happen and that's hard. That's then you're it then it's rightful to feel hurt if someone you know is trying to hurt you and saying the things that are really hurtful. But on some level, still question it and see why is this painful to me? Why are these words, just these sequence of words that a stranger said, hurting me? Why are they affecting me? Why am I wasting my time on this? Why is this ruining my day? And if you always run away from that, that's what you're practicing. We get better at what we practice. So if you practice running away from your discomfort, you're just always going to be running away from your discomfort. And I find that very often the things that bother us are a result of something happened in childhood, something that happened years ago. And it can be very difficult to remove yourself from that thing. It can be very difficult to move past it and accept it and to see it for what it is. But if you don't try, you're going to carry that thing with you forever. And why be 70 years old and still upset about something that happened when you were 7? Why do you want to do that to yourself? We spend so much time running away from the discomfort. We spend so much energy on that because it seems like sitting with the discomfort is a harder thing to do, but add it up across a lifetime, time accumulated across your entire life, it's easier. Maybe not easier, but I think it's more cost effective. I think you'll have a better return sitting through the discomfort because once you understand what's happening, you can start accepting it, and then you don't have to be as affected by it as you go through your life. Of course, there's moments of stress in which things leak through that you would have otherwise not been upset about, but at least you're aware of it. At least you're conscious. You're not living in this bubble in which you don't understand how you're going through the world and what in the world is going through you and hurting you. So I think sitting with the discomfort, although it seems hard, although it seems like the most difficult thing to do at times, sit with it. Even if you can only sit with it for a few minutes, even if you delay scrolling through your phone by 5 minutes to sit with the discomfort, that's 5 minutes of progress you have. At least you delayed it, right? That's like a harm reduction thing. Like at least you didn't do it immediately. And you just start teaching yourself. It's kind of like a behavioral modification thing in which you realize what it is that you're coping with and you stop it and you learn to stop it. So, just to recap, I'm going to give you 6 steps to sort of free yourself from self help and start helping yourself, right? Like George Carlin said, when you get a self help book, it's not really self help because somebody else wrote it. If it was self help, you would have did it yourself, right? So, this is real self help. This is the real self help of sitting with the discomfort. So, step one is the decision to change. Because if you don't make the decision to change, you're not going to change because it is work. It is work. It does take work. It takes effort. And if you're not even aware of the fact that it takes effort, if you're not even aware of the fact that you want to make this change, then you're not going to do it, right? So, step one is make a decision to change. Step two is recognize your maladaptive coping mechanisms. Because I find that those are sometimes easier to recognize than to recognize when we have discomfort. Because we're so accustomed to hiding our own discomfort from ourselves that it's sometimes very difficult to even recognize it. But the coping mechanisms are a little bit easier to see because if you know that you spend way too much time on your phone, if you know that you shop too much, if you know that you are overeating, or you know that you're spending time with people you don't like, then that's a very easy step to start with because chances are you're doing these things a lot and you can just kind of walk yourself through your day, pay attention to your day, pay attention to the things that you're doing that you don't want to be doing. That's probably where your maladaptive coping mechanisms are. So realize what they are. And then once you realize that you're doing them, you can take a second, step back, sit with the discomfort, and ask yourself, why was I about to do this thing I didn't want to do just because of this feeling? And where have I felt this feeling before? Does this feeling even belong to me? Is this just anxiety that I picked up from someone else throughout my day? Because that definitely happens. That happens to me where some people are sensitive, like myself, and you can be kind of like a sponge. And if you're around people that are negative, around people that are having a bad day, next thing you know, you're having a bad day. And unless you become conscious and unless you try to separate yourself from that situation and accept it and accept your sensitivity, you're just going to keep finding yourself in those situations. And I think most of all, ask yourself when you are sitting in your discomfort, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Where did this stem from? Why does this keep coming up in my life? Find the patterns. If you can find the patterns, you can figure out where the origin is. You can start to not just, diagnose and fix the symptoms. You can diagnose the larger problem that you have going on. And so that was step three, sitting with the discomfort. Step four is exploring the origins of discomfort, your triggers, all of those things. We just kind of talked about that. Step five is radical self acceptance, which is just whatever it is, whatever you're going through, accept it. Don't use it as an excuse, but accept it. Because what else can you do? If you don't accept it, you're just going to keep feeling bad. You're going to keep doing things you don't want to do. You're going to keep putting yourself in places you don't want to be. Accept. Just accept, as hard as it can be to accept yourself, accept yourself. And if you're a nice enough person, like many of you are, try to think about yourself as if you were someone else. Would you accept someone else if they came to you with this issue and were genuinely hurt by it, were genuinely trying to make change? You would probably accept them. So give yourself that same grace. And that's steps. Was there a final step? Was there a step six? Yeah, step six is integrating and trying to grow from it. So once you start accepting these things, you have to just do it in your everyday life, right? Because everything's a practice and you get better at what you practice. So if self-acceptance feels hard in the beginning, if it feels really uncomfortable, just keep doing it. Just keep practicing it, right? Just keep integrating it because it's going to get easier. And the pushing away is you're just going to get better at that. And you don't want that. As hard as it is to stop coping with discomfort, you're better off over the course of a lifetime just sitting with it and working through it and not subjecting others to that same pain, right? Because when we heal ourselves, we sort of heal our relationships and we heal the people around us as well. So I just want to challenge you to do that. Challenge you to sit with yourself, challenge you to figure out what it is that's causing you discomfort, what it is that's causing you to do things in your life that you don't want to do, and take more agency. Have more faith in yourself that you can solve your problems and that you don't need all of this self-help content, which is ironic because I'm sort of making self-help content, but I genuinely want you to grow from this. I'd rather have people grow and never watch my channel again than not grow, because I think as a society, as a world, if more people can grow, if more people can accept themselves, I think we're going to live in a much better world. And I think that's far more important than me continuing to make self-help videos, although it is fun. And I do enjoy talking about these things. And if you like this content, subscribe and comment and like so that the algorithm can send this to more people. And just work on yourself. Do it for you. Accept yourself. And I'll see you in the next video.